In this episode of Common SENSimilla, we'll be chatting with Al Shermer, the Chief Revenue Officer of Treon and CannaView, a company working hard to fill a huge hole in the digital marketing space for cannabis companies by providing targeted ad campaigns based on a wealth of consumer data. Al, welcome to Common SENSimilla. We appreciate you being here.
Hey, I appreciate you having me on, Will.
These conversations have been a ton of fun for me because they're like little mini master classes for me. I get to talk with people who are doing all sorts of different things in this space. Not a lot of them in the tech space, which I kind of consider my company. CannaPlanners we're sort of tech adjacent. We're techish. But
sure.
So I've been talking to a lot of like dispensary owners or CBD, producers, people trying to build brands. And I've had a couple tech people, right? I've talked to Zach Lipson from Dutchy and Sam Houston from Cannabis. So a couple people trying to do like online method or SaaS business model, those sorts of things. And it's always interesting. Like I love talking to all of the people I talk to, but when I get to talk, it just feels like talking shop. And I leave these conversations feeling far more educated. I'm like, that was a really good perspective. I used to be able to like go hang out with all you guys at trade shows or like, through whatever networking events. Now I host a podcast and I make you come to me. So I appreciate you being here.
Once upon a time, we'd probably be at the Chandelier Bar at CES or something like that.
Soon. Well, we're going to be in Vegas and I can't wait because it's the first trade show. I mean, I don't even remember, maybe since Vegas of like 2 years ago. Like I don't even know. So I'm excited for those to be coming back and CES is a fun one. Yeah. We'll be there. We'll represent all the weed contingency. I'm sure it's growing though. It must be growing.
Oh, it is growing, no pun intended, but yeah, rapidly growing, new players in the field. And just kind of like you touched on, so many different people from so many different backgrounds and different spaces that are kind of getting involved in this industry in one way or another. So it's super exciting time.
Absolutely. I find that there's a different kind of business acumen depending on where you enter the industry. You either come in maybe super young into the industry and this is the first thing you've ever done, or you've had a career outside of cannabis, kind of like you or I, and then brought that knowledge back into cannabis to figure out, okay, well, we realize that this thing is happening around us. And like, we have like Liam Neeson, we have these certain sets of skills that we can, that are of value to the cannabis industry. And it's just like really fun seeing like all these things that years ago would have been, marketed towards, I don't know, whatever, just like e-commerce or whatever, it's just boring stuff, like now we get to make it, now it's all cannabis. It's more fun. I have one initial question. Well, I have many questions for you, but my first question for you, because you're a Jersey guy, is Taylor ham or pork roll? Which is it?
I'm a pork roll guy. So there is a
Southern
dividing
Jersey
line.
Guy.
That's exactly. Southern Jersey. I am a Southern Jersey guy. So I am located about 25 minutes outside of Philadelphia.
Right.
So I am definitely a pork roll guy.
It's a really important question because I have I'm not from Jersey. My wife is, though. I have a rich history with Jersey. Helps me figure out what lines of questions where if I know where you're at, I can pull in certain thing, Jersey things.
You go.
We, our wedding band for sure was playing lots of Bruce Springsteen, a bit of Bon Jovi, all of it. You got a long career in video production.
Yeah. So we started out, it's probably been close to 20 years now. Starting out with one of the early and first forays into video and content syndication. We kind of joked back then, if you can remember back, I'm going to date myself here, but it was a Windows media player, we joked if we could get the Windows media player to pop up, that was a win. But yeah, so we started, I worked for Yeah. Worked for a startup called Jumbo, eventually acquired by Undertone back in the day, which was kind of a predecessor to 5 Min, if you remember that kind of model, where
Sure.
content syndication, video production, player technology, and of course, the video advertising that went along with it, and just kind of getting the message out for the brands and the content creators, and then creating additional revenue streams for the publishers.
You were one of those early guys trying to figure out how to monetize the internet, like figure out, okay, we've got all the, media is starting to play a bigger role on the internet than, just, text sites or chat rooms or whatever the internet was, you know, in the late 90s, early 2000s. But once those players started to develop, once like, a video play like QuickTime started, you had to figure out, okay, well, now we know people are using, there's media, and now we know people are actually engaging with it. Where can we fit the advertising in?
Right.
I'm curious, like, because I got lots of, production people I know, throughout my life. Like, there's a certain type of person who likes to be behind the camera, who can kind of control that medium and be able to tell that story, and not only maybe edit on the fly, but actually edit. I'm curious, like, what was that where you started? Like, were you just a passionate? Were you the dude with the camera at the parties?
No, no, I was kind of the guy behind the guy.
Yep.
So I think there was people that I knew and friends that were passionate about um, hey, kind of creating that content and putting that out. And I was more of the connector. It was, hey, I've created this piece. What do I do with it? Where does it go? How do I get eyeballs on it? How do I work? How do I get my message out? How do I show this to other people? And I think that's kind of where I've always fit in. I've been more of the connector piece as to, yeah, you know what? We have this great content. It fits this type of audience. How can we get that message in front of them? And that's always kind of the biz dev role that I've had throughout my career, is kind of putting those pieces together and then getting that content out there.
How do you focus, like, so what are those connections you're making, right? Like, there always lies that, like, world between, art and business, the connector, right? So what are those connections? Like, I mean, it's not like, you had a video, your video guy was like, hey Al, I made this commercial, this Toyota commercial on my computer, like, what do I, it's beautiful, what do I do with it, like, what is that connection?
I think that connection really is, it's a couple things, right? So I don't think it really started with the advertisement or the commercial. It was more the content, right? So it was, hey, you know what? There's a ton of content out there, and it's what content speaks to people and what content is done well and what content is really drives home value. Someone can engage with it, someone can understand it, someone can use it in a certain way and share it. And then from there, like I said, that's when kind of the marrying comes in and says, okay, hey, you know what? I have this content and this fits, and I have this, publisher, and that's their core audience. And I think they would really enjoy looking at these things. And then you've got both the content creator and the publisher, and of course, neither one wants to incur even additional costs of, hey, the video and the CDN and things like that. So it's now there's that third partnerships. Then it's going out and finding that advertiser that says, hey, look, we like to marry these three things together: the content, the publisher, the advertising. Let's put all those pieces together. So that way it's a win-win-win, right? So the content provider is getting in front of an audience that that they want to be in front of. The publisher is making additional revenue. The user of that publisher site is getting added value to the site without having to pay anything additional, because it's ad supported. And then of course the advertiser again is getting in front of that audience that they want, and they're helping a content creator and a publisher at the same time, kind of get this message out and kind of interact with that audience.
So in those early days, were you focused on, like, not only like figuring out maybe consumer personas, right? This is like almost pre, like, real data or analytics, right? So you're typically anecdotally, although sometimes a little more in depth than that, but like trying to figure out who's consuming this content and who does that consumer of content fit with, like on a, so what kind of, what were your customer personas, right?
Yeah, so it was, the very early days. Today, even for CannaView, we have a Cannagraph that really is kind of an all-encompassing, look at, a vast majority of the adult US population, and there's all sorts of different segments and first and third party data. And back then, there was really, it was, and you hear this now, it's kind of funny. You kind of hear that what's old is new again. It was a lot of contextual, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're starting to hear that word come back again, right? Because we've all heard about the cookieless world and how things are going to change and what people are going to do in this change. So there was a lot of contextual drivers and the very early parts of data. It was nothing like that is available now, but yeah, the original driver again was contextual and trying to find out. And then from there, it was a lot of kind of experimentation, kind of A/B testing, kind of seeing what played out, who reacted with what, and kind of finding out, okay, hey, this predominantly, you were using more like like a ComScore or QuantCast or someone like that, their data, and you're sitting there saying, okay, where this fits in this skews male or female or high household income or something like that, and you're trying to see who engaged. And it was almost like an exercise in and of itself to try to figure out what was working, what was it, and okay, if this is working on these types of sites with these types of audiences, and we know the background, it wasn't in real time the way it is now, but we would then try to find that next one and go from there. So it's funny because I think I have a tendency to try to find these wild west points. I don't know if I do it on purpose or not, but it was, we were early on the video side. When we started off Tryon, it was, wasn't reinventing the wheel. It was just kind of flipping from, more desktop traditional model into mobile when mobile wasn't doing anything. And now here we are in the cannabis side, and we're still, on the forefront of that, trying to figure things out. So, it's interesting to see how some of these pieces have evolved and overlapped.
Yeah, it's like you're starting over again because, and I want to get into this because this is like a huge part of it. But the challenges of digital advertising. I mean, I feel like probably anybody listening to this has heard me talk about this ad nauseum, but we're definitely going to get into it, you and I, about that. But before we do, I want to go back to like those personas and working backwards. It's almost like, as you were talking, I'm like picturing like, wow, you could almost like write a scene for Mad Men in the time period that Mad Men takes place in, and just swap out like, any of the scenes where they're doing, feedback sessions with panels and that sort of thing, and just replace the medium of like Time Life magazine with, the internet, right? Like
Yep.
the methods of figuring out like what the end product is going to be for the advertiser it's the same thing. And then now, like, I feel like people who are still doing print kind of still have those conversations, but as you alluded to, like the wealth of data, and this is the other big topic we're going to get into is data and how that kind of has influenced the growth of your business. But like now you have data, like you don't need to worry about anecdotal. You can see exactly where people click, where even sometimes where their eyes are on a screen. There's so many points of data beyond just like where in the world they are, what gender they are, what age they are. Like that's the easy stuff, right? Collecting all that stuff. There's, as you said, like, hundreds of other data points that can then influence an actual ad campaign, right? It's like going back to, not going back, like doing the exact opposite of what you had to do, when you were starting Tryon.
Yeah, it's amazing where the data world has gone, and now just like you said, you almost do it in the opposite direction. You kind of look at the breakdown of, um, what is this segment? What are they? I'm not just looking for, is this a male or female? You have, you've targeted that person. You have that data. Now you hopefully have that purchase data as well. And now you're taking a look, and now you're dissecting what you have. So it's not just, hey, this is Al and he's, male and he's this age and, these things, but it's, you know, who is Al, right? What does he do? What does he like? What else does what else is he into? Where else does he shop? And then you're trying to figure out, who are the like people that would kind of fit in. Like, is there a persona in here? And you're almost building that, but instead of just contextually, you're using full data layer sets. For example, we, had a client that was doing, was finding their high repeat purchasers, right? So they looked at everything and they started to run marketing campaigns towards, an affluent, right? And they try to spruce things up, package everything together and say, hey, this is really what we want to do because these are our high end users. These are our high HHI clients. And we started to break down their data and started to look at the first party data and things like that, their point of sale data. And we said, yeah, you know what? You're marketing all these people the same, but in reality, you have a couple of different segments. And what really you have is two huge segments. Yes, you do have a group that spends a good deal. They have a high ticket order and they are part of your high HHI group. However, you have this other group over here that is spending just as much. And if you look at the data, they're probably spending more than they really should be every month on your product. And they're not the high HHI. They're what, we kind of dubbed a super fan. But you're marketing them the same way. So, as you were, just because the only thing you looked at was, what's this average ticket price and how often? Oh, they're buying this ticket price every month. So this must be this. And it's like the data has come along, so far over the years that now you can look at that and say, hey, if I'm going to market this, I'm going to market two separate campaigns here. This campaign here is going to go towards my affluent buyer, but this campaign here is going to go towards my super fan. And, I'm going to do some different things with them, and reward them and hopefully, because usually when you find that person, you're also finding people that are talking about your brand and driving word of mouth and telling others about your brand and things like that. So, that's really where we are today, on the data side is,
it's fascinating. So
it is.
I'm curious. So is it no longer a volume game in terms of like the ROI for buyers? So like what I mean is like, 20 years ago, or now to get a commercial in the Super Bowl, which hopefully has the eyes of every American or something like that, will cost whatever millions of dollars for a 15-second spot, um, and that's so that's a volume game. I'm hoping every American sees this ad and buys a F-150 or whatever, as opposed to now I'm just targeting the exact people who I know will drive an F-150. Bad example, the most popular car ever made in America. Everyone has one, but you get my point. Like, am I just targeting those exact people versus like I'm hoping millions of people see this thing and remember who my company is?
It's definitely, I don't think I would go so far to say it's only,
right,
but it's definitely more towards that. So really it is, there's two parts to it, right? So yes, I think marketers are becoming so much smarter, so much more efficient, right? They break down the data. They have teams of analysts, right? They're looking at everything and they're trying to find, exactly. And then they're finding that person. But then again, there's always going to be a certain portion that is what I'll call the net new, right? So you still need to go out and find and maybe kind of expand the limitations. It might not be Super Bowl, right? It's not I'm spraying it out to everybody across the US, but there's still like, okay, let's try this, this or that. Let's try this piece. Let's try a different message. Let's try a different audience. How does it resonate? I mean, we've all seen, and we've all seen brands which are, right, they might have multiple products that technically are the same product. They just have a different packaging and different name, and they have a different target audience. And it's like, okay, this is really basically the same, but I'm going to gear this towards the millennial, and I'm going to gear this towards, the senior, and we're going to message it out that way. But in reality, the product itself, is fairly similar.
I
So
mean, I see it because I'm a avid consumer of YouTube content. I cut the cable years and years ago, so YouTube's just one of the outlets. I swear to God, Febreze I swear they're putting all their marketing dollars into me personally. Like, this is how I feel. And if you're listening, Febreze, there's not a chance in hell I'm ever going to buy your product. It's disgusting and it doesn't smell good. But every commercial I get on YouTube, so I can see that where it's like, maybe targeted to a specific demographic, but also like it's almost the only ad I see, you know.
right, exactly, and just like that, right? So they might have, they might take a certain scent of that and market it towards one group, and then take, hey, I know you've got young kids and they're playing and their sports equipment stinks, and now I'm going to market it to that parent group. But essentially, it's still the same product.
Same
There's
Febreze.
right. So, but it's just they're going to now find different ways in different segments, and again, a lot of it's testing, and then you're seeing what works, what doesn't, and the part that did work, you're trying to find, you're digging through the data to try to find the unique connections. Where are the links, where are the overlaps, to kind of build out a market segment.
To totally go off topic, there's something that sort of there's usually a moment in every entrepreneur's career where they like get a deal, or they're able to hire somebody or whatever, and it's just like the first milestone event, like, where you like close a deal and you're like, yeah, you're basically like, hey, I'm Mr. Sales Guy. Yeah, no problem. Oh, we can definitely do the deal. I'll send the contracts over tomorrow. And then you hang up the phone. You're like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Oh, thank God. you know, I'm curious. I'm curious if you can relate to that and what that was for you.
On the CannaView side,
Sure.
on
Well,
the
Treon
CannaView
was
side,
first, right? I feel like that was.
yeah,
Yeah, let's go
yeah.
back in time, because you were younger, so probably there was like maybe some moments where you're like, "What the hell am I doing?" Or like, no one wants to hire us, or whatever.
Yep.
Maybe you didn't
Yeah.
have that problem.
So, oh, we definitely had that problem. I think anybody who's ever worn the label entrepreneur has had that problem.
Hell yeah.
So so we were starting out, and I don't know if you're familiar with the Wreck-It brand, which is really an umbrella of brands. It's most people don't know the name, but if you've seen all their products, the best thing to say is like they're a P&G or a J&J
Mm-hmm.
of just CPG products.
Mm-hmm.
And we're working on, we've now flipped. So Tryon has now flipped this, desktop video solution into this mobile video solution. And you're really in the early days of mobile, and you're trying to get, video and space and things like that. And I'll be blunt. It is, if you've ever dealt with them, it is not the best of what we'd call CPMs or rates. But we were struggling at that time just to have traction and just be like, hey, you know what, we can run X. And
Yep.
all of a
Validation.
sudden, all of a sudden they're like, well, hey, could you handle? And they literally came in and basically said to us, in our terms, like, we're going to help fund this thing, because it's like, okay, we're going to go from where we are now, and we're going to quadruple what we're doing, just because we're going to bring on this brand, this brand umbrella, and we're going to start running everything. And of course, like you said, you're on the phone going, yeah, we've got all
Yeah,
that
no
inventory.
problem.
We'll clear that out. We don't have
We'll
any
do it on time and
worries.
under budget.
Right. And then you hang up the phone, and then you're like, you can't believe it happened, and you're ecstatic, right? You're like, this is great. You're going great, and you have that celebration time, and then all of a sudden reality sinks in, and you're like,
Yes.
holy
Deliver.
crap, how are we going to deliver this?
Yeah.
and then and then it's like all hands on deck, and you're just trying to figure things out from there. And I think
that's the best
I think
thing.
everybody's had that moment, right?
Well, I love hearing about it too. Like, it's one of my favorite things to ask guests because, like, yes, you're right. Everybody, unless they just flat out like failed right out the gate, or the opposite, we're just flat out like rocket success out the gate, which neither of those things tend to happen, right? Yeah, this is a sort of thing that all entrepreneurs can relate with, which is like, it's most commonly referred to as fake it till you make it, right? So you're putting on an act like, yes, I can definitely do this thing that in your brain you're like, I'm not actually sure I can do it, but I'm going to say I can because I have to. And if I don't, then the other company they're going to talk to is going to get it, and I'm screwed, right? Then we really are screwed. We build the bridge as we cross it. Or if you're CannaPlanners, you build the bridge as we burn it. I'm curious what you're the first chief revenue officer we've had on the podcast. I'm curious what your day-to-day is like.
If there was a typical day-to-day, I'd give it to you. But especially in the market that we're in, I kind of overlap a few things. I deal with, obviously, the revenue side. So different revenue streams in from different sides. The Tryon side being more of a tech and branding side. The CannaView side, obviously, being a cannabis and CBD accelerator. I deal with, overseeing kind of the VP of sales and his sales team and things of that nature. And then, I also deal in a lot of times working on the big strategic partnerships, right? So it might not be that, that IO or that specific deal to run that very specific campaign, but it's okay, whether it's the brand or an MSO or an agency or whatever, getting everyone, in place, getting everything set up, connecting all the dots, making sure any of the tech integrations are done, and really just kind of setting up the overall, business relationship is what I deal in most of the time. And then start to work to then bring in my sales team to help on the very specifics. Okay. So now that we have everything, set up, we have everything integrated, we know what you want to do. Where do you want to really start with your first campaign? And then I bring in my sales team, my account management team, to go through and sit there and say, okay, I know you now want to target this specific audience in this specific area. So this is what we're going to do. So the fun thing is I get to do a lot, right? I get to do things like this, right? I get to do some marketing pieces, some public facing things. Like you said, not as many conferences over the last year or so, but that looks like it's coming back.
Definitely.
I get to deal with and speak to a lot of marketing, CMOs and marketing people as to the challenges of their brands. And also I deal with a lot of, I guess you'd almost call them like a general manager, on the websites they're trying to figure out their e-com, and they're trying to figure out how to drive sales and better their ROAS and go through and do that. So I think that's kind of the fun part about my job is I don't have a typical day to day. I kind of touch so many different pieces of it. But
I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah, which is, but the main thing for me is kind of the large strategic partnerships and kind of that vision as to, where we're going as a company and within this industry.
Well, I probably deep down inside, you're still a sales guy at heart. And, the thing about sales guys is, try as we might, but, it's hard to resist the occasional deal closing. Right.
Yep.
You mentioned before that, like, as you were like transitioning, so Tryon purchased CannaView, or was it how did that merger work?
Yeah. So the way it worked was Tryon merged into CannaView. So Tryon was the older partner, and CannaView we had worked with, and we had known the co-founders and had worked with them in different companies in the past, on the Tryon side. And as the CannaView brand started, I think a lot of people, them included, right, thought that this would be a lot easier than it is, right? I think they
Can't wait to
thought that,
talk about
yeah.
this.
I think, because the ad industry has grown up so much, I think there was a feeling that, hey, you know what, we can run programmatic, we can kind of set these things up. We can use the DSP, we've already got some inventory sources. It'll be plug and play. It'll be great. No, none of it. If and even today, right? Even today, from the Canna side, there's still no Google. There's no Facebook, right? You're not doing promoted social. You could do some things on the CBD side. You got to be careful what you say, and there's a lot of frustration.
That's all like,
yeah.
As we're taping this or recording this in June, like that's only like a month old, like a couple months that you've been able to like weasel CBD in, like without having landing pages or secondary Instagram accounts or those sorts of things, via educational sources. So let's get into this, right? Because the marketing challenges, like it's not surprising that company, they all called me too, all of them, saying, hey man, boy, do we have a solution for you. It's called programmatic advertising, and we're gonna like make all your clients millionaires by putting their advertisements on the shittiest of inventory you can imagine, and it's gonna cost a lot of money too. So because cannabis, right? Because whatever reason, federal legalization, or I don't know, whatever it says within the depths of the terms of service agreements that you click I agree on without reading. It's presented numerous challenges for businesses operating in the cannabis space. And let's just talk about CBD, because I think that's the one that makes the least sense, right? Like if there's going to be marketing challenges towards dispensaries, like that might just be kind of the burden they take on as being, front runners in this formerly illicit game. But CBD companies are no different than, a vitamin company or any wellness company. So why would they have the same sort of marketing challenges as a cannabis company? So you alluded to social media not really wanting to play with us. You alluded to Google, the largest ad network in the world, not wanting to take cannabis dollars. How did you? So I'm curious. Why do you think why don't these big companies want our money? Why won't they let us advertise with them? And B, how do you? And still, because these challenges still exist, how did you kind of? What was the crystal ball you were looking at, right, when the acquisition of CannaView kind of was put on your table? And how are you still like making sure that future you saw, because we're not there yet, is achievable? You see what I'm saying? Was that a convoluted enough question?
Yeah. Yeah. So in parts, I think the why right now is, I think to them it's risk, right? There's still a stigma. And to be honest with you, right, anybody that looks into it and says, cannabis versus hemp derived CBD, right, they're completely two different things. But, those big players, with everything that's going on, I think are like, hey, you know what? We're okay to sit here on the sidelines, let somebody else take the risks, let them kind of fight it out. And if we need to, when we need to get in, we'll kind of go grab somebody and we'll hop in, or we'll kind of mimic and try to see what we can do there. Mm-hmm. So I think that's kind of the why. I think it's really just, we're not going to get our hands dirty, type of thing. Yeah. For us and kind of the crystal ball, that was the interesting thing between, Tryon and CannaView, right? So we work with all these direct publishers, right? Everything wasn't programmatic. And it's still one of the, I'll call it one of the charms, right, of still working with us. We don't just randomly plug things into an SSP and hope that it works, right? It's not 100%. It's not all of our publishers we work with direct, and we do programmatic and retargeting. But we do have a large publisher base, and we were able to go out and we're able to pick up the phone, shoot out an email, talk to them. What are you doing? What are you accepting? And that's kind of how this started, right? It was, we had, clients coming to us saying, it's just, you could hear the frustration in their voices. I've tried this, I've tried that, I got blocked here. And what we kept seeing over and over was people that started and then days later were declined, right? So somehow they got through, they were approved, they ran for 2 to 3 days. They're like, yes, we're going, here it is, we're working. And then all of a sudden they check their stats the next morning. They're like, wait a minute, this thing shut off at 10 o'clock last night, and I can't figure out how to get back on. And then all of a sudden they're rejected, right? And it's like, now you're running a, CBD. So we went out directly to the publishers, and we started with the cannabis side, figuring that was kind of the harder and higher sale, right? It said, hey, look, there's this whole new category in this whole new world, and you're an LDA compliant site, and would you have interest in running this? And if you had the yes from them, and testing it out, the nice thing is we were a trusted partner of theirs, right? It wasn't some new company and some new brand that was saying, oh, by the way, hey, I'm the new Canna advertiser and I want to advertise on your site. It was, hey, we've been working with these clients for 9 years, and they were like, yeah, you know what? I don't know how I feel about it, and we got every type of answer, right? From like, yeah, let's try it, to I'm not sure, let's do a test, to let me contact legal, right? You got a little bit of everything.
Right.
But we were able to go to them and say, look, this is what we have. This is the opportunity. And if they said no to the cannabis side, then we would then fall back on the CBD side. Say, okay, hey, if cannabis wasn't your, that's a little too progressive. What do you think about CBD? Because again, like you said, we almost look at CBD as the supplement side.
Right.
It's like it really shouldn't be as many issues there are with CBD. The ironic thing with CBD is you would think it would be cannabis that would be the advertising issue in terms of like the FDA and like things like that. It's really the CBD side.
Yeah.
And where the CBD side falls into trouble is making medical claims, right? Hey, take this for this, right? It will relieve your pain. It cures this. It does that. It'll help you sleep. Ironically, the CBD side, though you'd think it would be easier, tends to be the one that butts up against the FDA all the time. And
100% of the time.
Yeah. So, so that's kind of how it all came about. It was a lot of hand holding and phone calls and one-on-ones. And
well, I think that's the important, that's the benefit of the route you took, right? You had Tryon, which had, been nurturing these publisher relationships for forever, right? So just, as opposed to kind of the route I took, which was, we're starting a marketing agency for cannabis. I'm quitting my job tomorrow and we're starting this company, right? Like from nothing, as opposed to like being able to fall back on the rich history of something I had done prior and then just full, pivot. I imagine most of your publishers were open to it in some capacity, right? Like, eventually, because you had that sort of trust factor that you'd just been building on for.
Yeah, we had again, in the early days, CBD way more, but we probably had 70 to 80% of the publishers in the very beginning that were like, yeah, you know what? I'm not really sure about the cannabis side of things. Not sure where that's going just yet, but I'm willing to try out the CBD side. And I'd probably say there's maybe in the very beginning 20 to 25% of the publishers that were on, that were like, yep, let's go on the cannabis side and we'll do the CBD as well, and we'll go from there. As everything progresses, right? As you see new states going medical, new states going recreational, you're starting to see that turn of, support, for, across the polls in the US. More and more publishers are starting to see the ads out there, and they're starting to see what they look like, right? We build
Right.
a lot of the ads as well, right? And
Yep.
we have a whole compliance sheet that we go through and double check, and an AI that checks everything as well. And it's the ads themselves, there's strict guidelines as to what we can show, what we can't, and we're not. I think in the beginning, publishers were worried about like, hey, we're going to throw like these, you know, people
Totally.
smoking
I
right,
already know where you're
you
going.
know,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and it's like, God, that's not where we're going with this. And then we were able to show them some of the ad creatives, and they're like, oh, they're like, that's beautiful. I love it, and it's done in a tasteful way. It shows the product. It's not really going overboard on anything. It's not making any claims, and they're like, I'm comfortable with this.
I,
And again, I think like we talked about with the publishers, and getting them to try it, it's a trust factor, and
yeah.
we've done right by them, and we make sure we continue to do so.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting hearing you say that because we take a very similar approach. Now, granted, we're not, purely because of things like FDA and more importantly for our CBD clients, payment processing, right? Like the payment processors have those same exact, the reason why all those standards exist basically are because of the payment processing situation. But we see all those same things, and I always love hearing about this imaginary dichotomy that I see all the time of like uh you know uh lifelong or tried and true cannabis consumers, and then um the people who marketing people are trying to turn into cannabis consumers, right? And on the one side, there may be a projection that like because of traditional marketing tactics like people smoking weed or like whatever, cheech and like whatever, whatever stoner stereotypes you have, yes, put that into an ad situation. That's the projection from one side of the aisle, and the other side is that that's going to change, and now we're going to welcome in all these new people, and even that's scary. But meanwhile, for I read about this all the time because I'm an idiot who reads blogs like this, but like that there's almost like a pushback now happening on sort of the commercialization of the emerging cannabis industry. Meanwhile, like I think it's the most important thing because not only are you reaching a wider number of clients, a bigger, like an actual bigger number of potential customers, you're pushing the war on drugs way the fuck back, right?
Yep.
You're actually like taking this thing that like has stigma because of traditional imagery or propaganda, mostly, um, and trying to remove those things. So it's just refreshing to hear like that you're taking that same approach,
Yeah.
for different reasons, but the same
Yeah. And
quality. It's just like a standard of quality.
it's definitely, and even the data supports it, right? So when we look at back on who the purchasers, and we're going through, the point of sale systems, and we're working with the brands. Yes, you know what? Millennials are probably, they're the number one target, but the number two target, the number two purchaser behind them, seniors,
Yep.
right? And that's all pain, and that's even kind of my journey into, my own personal journey into this. I have 4 herniated discs in my neck and 2 in my back,
Damn,
and
son.
I have, when I went to the doctors, I was, here's Valium, here's Vicodin, here's Oxycontin, here's Lyrica. I mean, I was loaded up with, so I had the choice to either be in pain or, be like a glass of water that couldn't even, I was just knocked out to the world.
Yeah.
And I found through, New Jersey has always had a medical program that, that because I was in such bad shape, that I qualified for, and I dumped all that stuff down the toilet. Right. And that's kind of how my personal journey on this whole thing, started. Right. And
Yeah.
it's interesting because so many people that I now speak with and work with, they're all over the place, right? They are, me that's in pain, or they might be elderly, or had an elderly family member, or they might be that, hey, just that recreational pot smoker that just enjoys, relaxing. And the
Sure.
thing is, we all come from all over the place, but everybody in this industry that I've seen, um, has been, it's a pretty accepting and a pretty open kind of industry. And there are, like you said, some that are kind of worried about, or against that commercialization because they're used to things the way it was and kind of their own, their own little market and how things run. But, you're seeing everybody use
Oh
this.
yeah.
Our biggest growth sectors right now is Gen Z, which is the youngest group that
Yep.
is starting to become legal, and females. The female audience is the biggest that we're seeing on the data side, is the biggest net new purchasing segment, and just continues to grow. So I think like everybody that thought like you said it was going to be Cheech Chang or Spicoli,
Yeah.
right? There is that person, there is that,
Sure.
but there's also so many other people on that spectrum.
Absolutely. I hit many of the data points on the spectrum. So I'm your Spicoli, I'm your med user, I'm your this, I'm your that. Uh, I want to talk about data. At what point did you step back and realize that data was becoming a bigger revenue driver? Or maybe it's not. I don't know. But when was it becoming a competitive revenue driver to creative?
It was, I think, from day one, it was always in the back of our minds. All right,
You knew that
because
this thing, this as macro and as detailed as data can be in terms of all the points of interest that uh, advertisers want to track. Like you knew.
right, just from dealing again, from having kind of that CPG background and seeing what they were doing, and seeing how they use data, seeing how much data they purchase on their end, and what they're doing with their DMPs and things like that. Yeah, we knew, not to joke, but in the beginning, like we talked
Sure.
about, we were just like, hey, we had to be an inventory source, right? We had to be a spot. And that was kind of how it started, right? We were just hey, you can't get this campaign run anywhere. We'll do that for you. We'll help you out. But that's not a long-term sustainable business model, nor is it, the best thing for each brand, right? So we kind of knew from day one that data was going to become kind of the key point, to be out front.
Yeah.
And just since then, and really, the pandemic, ironically, kind of accelerated everything, right?
Really.
Because as traditional brands, right, we were working with Pepsi and we were doing a bunch of stuff that was tied to all their different sporting events around, in each different city, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, when all the sports shut down, it's like, okay, well, we're not advertising, but the CBD and the cannabis side started to grow. That's when we started to start to see people say like, okay, you know what? I want to target this audience, or I feel that this is my target audience. And we're saying like, yeah, well, let's try to put these pieces together. Let's start to use them. And now you're starting to see, especially the more savvy marketers, they're leading with that. They're being hired from, right, agencies and traditional marketing and traditional brands, and they're trying to bring those things, and they're sitting there saying, okay, what data do you have? What first party? What third party? What can I tap into? How do I
Mm-hmm.
find this audience? How do I learn about my audience and my purchasers and dive a little deeper? And we knew right from day one that's where it was going. And now you're starting to see, and it's still, the wave is just starting to come out of the water. Like it's still the very beginning. But
Absolutely.
just moving forward, it's going to be, it's going to be the first thing that everybody talks about when they're looking at their campaigns.
100%. And with it, you don't have to get obviously too specific or into too much proprietary information, but I'm curious kind of like the business model of data, right? So I'm a potential client, right? I have I'm a potential client of yours. I have certain goals in mind, a certain budget. I come to you, you pitch me a campaign, and you show me exactly who that campaign's going to get in front of. How Walk me through that a little bit.
So the data side, what's interesting about the data side is it can really run the gamut. So it can be anything from what you just described, right? And you might have a smaller client that's looking to set up, um, that's looking to set up a campaign, and they're looking to target a specific audience, and they want to see what segments might work, or what, and they're trying to basically just target for the net new. And we're kind of pulling those, and we're showing what people have targeted, and we're showing both from the Canna world and a lot from the CPG world, what has worked in the past, and we're kind of helping them, we're educating, we're guiding them. Um, that goes from that all the way up to, you're talking enterprise level. If you were an MSO and you really wanted to start to connect the dots between all your dispensaries, you talked about the payment processing and things like that. The knowledge of the data and how different things connect between different dispensaries, and then there's different brands of dispensaries, and then there's different brands owned by that same MSO in each of those dispensaries, and kind of connecting all those parts. That's when someone's really diving deep, and they're really treating their company as as a true CPG brand, and they're trying to learn the insights of their, both of their clients and their products. So it can run everything from just, let's walk through one single campaign, and let's show you, how you can target, how we can do this, and we'll kind of fold a little bit of everything. Here's the compliance, here's the creative, here's the data, here's the inventory, here's how it works, all the way to, on an enterprise level, here's what you're seeing, here's what you can see, and here's how you can market segment, kind of how we talked about the high HHI people earlier, and then finding out, how do I set up these markets? How do I market to each one of these consumers? Where do I find them? How can I set up specific campaigns to them, and really having them, kind of own their own data? Because to be honest with you, there's still a lot of, even the largest of large, right, of MSOs that are still trying to figure out, like, okay, I'm sitting on this treasure trove of data, right? I have this information from my clients, they've purchased, they've given me the information. I don't know what to do with it. So that's where we help them.
Put it all together, build the puzzle, rip it apart, put it back together for them.
Yep.
So one thing I've been kind of, as we go through our own little, modest bit of scale, I'm always curious about acquisition. Like, it's like we were talking about earlier, where, that first sale was like, we need this. Hey, Al, we need this, this, and this. And you're like, yeah, no problem. But then like that, then it becomes a reality, and more people are saying that to you, right? And you're able to sustain it until you hire whomever, and then you're able to sustain that until you hire whomever. But if you're trying to, like, follow a SaaS model, or at least be like, I don't know how to say this articulately, but successful on a entirely different scale than maybe other businesses, right? You have to be thinking about client acquisition and going from 5 sales a month to 55 sales a month, right? So I'm always curious about those sorts of things, especially with companies like yours. Like, and as chief revenue officer, like, I'm sure this is something that you're thinking about. So, like, beyond implementing your own marketing tactics, walk me through that a little bit. Like, going from that one client to now you got 20 clients. Now you got 120 clients.
So, I mean, in the very beginning, it was difficult for a couple reasons. Not just the stuff we talked about in terms of inventory and where you could place it and things you could do, but the industry itself, right? There wasn't a lot of data out there. The industry itself is a brand new market segment. So, there was I guess you call it a trial period, right? Or a trial and error period, maybe is a better phrase for it, right? Where we were just like, we were testing a lot of different things, and we were honing in on, what worked and what didn't. And, we were fortunate enough to have a lot of great partners and a lot of great clients that were like, hey, you know what? We haven't been able to do anything, so we're almost willing to try anything. Let's let's work together and let's figure it out. You know, and then once we were able to get to a point where we would blend in, you know, kind of our high impact creative, and kind of some upper funnel stuff, and then the retargeting and the data, and we were able to show ROI, and we were able to have a lower ROAS and drive, you know, a lower CPA for our clients. We started to figure out, then it just became, okay, now we know what we're doing. So now it's how do we make it a repeatable, right, and a scalable product, right? So that's a whole new set of challenges, right? Because,
right.
You know, when you're not the biggest of company, you can't just turn on, you know, 1,000 different clients to say, oh yeah, we'll just do the same thing for all of them. We'll do this. So
let's hire 10 sales guys. Let's put all of our money
Yeah.
into retargeting. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. Go.
Yeah. The nice part about having the try on back end was the tech side was built out, scalable, and
yeah, you already have
you know, had a ton of connections. And I think that was why the marriage of Tryon and CannaView was, you know, when we looked at it, everybody's like, yeah, this makes complete sense.
Totally.
And that's what has helped us scale, is because we'll use technology, and I don't need to add 3 to 4 people, you know, every time we add in another, you know, 5 or 10 clients, right?
Yep.
We have lanes, you know, things that can be repeatable or can be automated are automated by the technology. Things that, you know, that need that helping hand, you know, are handled by our staff. You know, and then we have a great staff that, again, I think because we had such a strong CPG background, it wasn't like we were crossing over into this new industry. We were more talking to them about this industry as to how they should be like the CPG industry, and how eventually you're going to be the new CPG industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
In that terms of growth. So that's just been kind of, you know, I think the technology, you know, and the base of people that we had, you know, in the company helped us with what would have been scale pain points for a younger company if it was, say, just the CannaView startup on its own.
Totally. I'm asking the chief revenue officer. I bet I can. I bet I know what the answer is going to be. What's more important for you guys, being mission driven or sales focused? And I know that they're not mutually exclusive. They're both very important. What do you think is more important to, I guess, the growth of the company? It's
Well,
like, duh, revenue.
Yeah, well,
but I mean, both of those things play into it, right? Like the revenue is for sure the most important, and for some companies, it's the most important. That's totally fine. I'm just curious, like, where CannaView falls into that.
The revenue is the lifeblood, but the mission is the most important.
Oh, I love the way you put that. Yeah, that's totally it. Yeah, exactly. You got to believe in what you're doing, and it'd be nice to pay for it to be paid for.
Right. Exactly. Right. Without any revenue, we're not around to do what we feel is right. But we are a mission driven company, right? And the brands we work with are mission driven brands, right? So it's really cool to see, you know, the backstory for each of these brands, and you talk to, and it's, you know, there's certainly some people that have just jumped in thinking, hey, this is the next big thing, and I'm going to hop in and I'm going to try to make millions. There are some, but there's so many people that are like, hey, I started this because of, you know, a pet that I had, and I started this pet CBD line, and it really helped, and, you know, or an aunt, or, you know, and you start to hear this emotional story. And with them, again, same thing with them, their product sales, that revenue is going to be their lifeblood, but it's never going to overtake their mission. And I feel that, you know, the moment we make this revenue first, or, you know, revenue is the mission, is the time when people will say, well, you know, CannaView is really not the spot for me. You know, and then you'll see the revenue go. So we're in a unique market segment that can do a lot of good, socially, physically, right, economically. It's incredible. I mean, when you look at all the aspects of life it touches, all the different people it touches, it's not segregated to any area, race, religion, anything, you name it, right? It's across the board. And And I think that's always going to be, mission, that will always be mission critical for CannaView is, how do we promote it? How do we help people? How do we help people use this product? How do we help new people find this product and hopefully change their lives?
That's awesome. That was very well put. I would say that I'm totally aligned with that. Like, the more I keep asking entrepreneurs like that specific question, yeah, like that was very well put. So I don't want to take up too much of your more of your time. I very much appreciate you, hanging out with me. I'm curious kind of what's next for CannaView, like as the continued challenges of marketing cannabis continue to either become more confounded or less, depending on your point of view, or where you work in the marketing of cannabis. Uh, what's next?
You know, I think if I had the crystal ball, I'd be a billionaire by now. But every day this market changes. You just saw just the other day, Connecticut, go legal, and I think that's where it is. The next thing for us is continuing to fight the stigma, right, and
Yeah,
educate and kind of lift the industry in as a whole, right? And in working with partners and then showing those partners, how they can connect, with certain experiences in timely manners with their consumers, and be a trusted brand for them. And again, like I said, it's kind of bringing, all those things to the forefront and kind of, just continuing to take this it's still very fleggling industry and fledgling business, and kind of helping promote and getting it over into the next level, because every day you're seeing momentum. Now, whether that momentum necessarily makes things easier or harder, yet to be seen. You
totally.
never know where the rules, regulations, and laws are going to go. But that's why we're here, right?
It's
That's
forever an adventure, Al. It's forever
yep.
an adventure, and the beauty, and I think the exciting part about, um, you know, being on the forefront of a whole new thing like this is that it's an adventure, and you got to be prepared to go wherever the wind blows. With that said, Al Shermer, thank you so much for chatting with me. Can you tell the people watching, listening, whatever, where they can find out more about CannaView?
Yeah, yeah. First of all, thank you so much, Will, for having me. This is a lot of fun, and I appreciate it.
Good.
You can check us out online at cannaview.net, which is CANNAVU.net. Or you can email me directly at Al, just real simple, my first name, at Tryon, which is TRION as in Nancy.io.
Awesome. We'll link those below, not your email, but we'll link those websites both below in the description. Al Shermer, Chief Revenue Officer at Tryon at CannaView, breaking ground for cannabis advertising, making things happen. We appreciate you. Thank you to everybody listening. This has been another episode of Common SENSimilla. We will see you next time. Bye.